singing together, "O God, we call," from Voices United. The words will appear on your screen following Barry's minute for meditation solo. As a sign of our love and care, we kindle light. As we have kindled light here, I invite you to light your candle at home. The light that burns here and in all of our homes burns within each of us, holding us in love, calling us to reach out in love to our neighborhood and world. Part of the way we love is to stand in solidarity with the Indigenous peoples of this land, especially the Mississaugas of the Credit. Through what is known as the Toronto Purchase, we are joined in a treaty with them. We come together today as we are, with all of our certainties and doubts, our hopes and our fears. We come confident that God accepts and loves us as we are, and as the whole beautiful people of God, we may become with God's help. Let us pray. God, with great gentleness and care, you call us to be your people, to journey with you, and to do your work. Be here with us today, for we come asking for your support in all that we do. We need your love, transforming our lives in hope. Be with us wherever we are, waking us up to the challenges and opportunities of this new day. We pray in the name of your child, Jesus. Amen. Our opening hymn is "Let Us Build a House." If you have more voices, it's number 1 in more voices. Let us come before God in prayer. Eternal God, in these passages of Scripture, may your word be heard. In the meditations of our hearts, may your word be known. And in the faithfulness of our lives, may your word be shown. Amen. Jacob is leaving home. He's about to set off on a journey. And unlike his grandparents, Abraham and Sarah, he's not received a call from God to travel to a land that God would show him. And unlike his grandparents, he is all by himself. They at least had each other. They had their nephew Lot and his family and their servants. But he is by himself. Now, those of us who are inclined to be judgmental might say that he has brought this on himself. Jacob was contending with his twin brother Esau before they even saw the light of day. And with the passage of time, it didn't get any better between the two of them. And it wasn't helped by the fact that the parents each openly favored one son over the other. But it was Jacob's idea to use his brother's hunger to maneuver Esau into giving up his birthright. In other words, his right to be the leader of the family and to a double portion of the inheritance because he was the firstborn child. And Jacob does go along with his mother's plan to trick his blind father into thinking he's Esau and getting Isaac's blessing. So is it any wonder that Esau, who has been maneuvered out of his birthright and tricked out of his blessing, is angry? And are we surprised that Esau is seriously contemplating following in the footsteps of Cain and murdering his brother? So he has no choice really but to leave home. So there he is. Can we put ourselves in the footsteps, in those shoes of Jacob? Have there been times in our own lives when we have left home? Perhaps as young people to go to university or college or take that first job. Or as adults when employment dried up and there were opportunities in another region or country. Or as seniors when it became clear that we could no longer manage on our own and we needed some sort of assisted living. So we had to pack up and move. Or maybe there have been times when we have left home, not literally, but figuratively. We didn't pack our bags and we didn't hit the highway, but because of a death or illness or some other major event, home just didn't seem the same anymore. I suspect that with the current global pandemic, all of us are able to identify more easily with Jacob. We're still at home probably, but home doesn't feel the same. We can't have people over and just entertain. You know, they have to be in our social circle or we have to keep our physical distance. And so there's Jacob, and he's left home and he's on the road. And this is a man who's always liked staying in the tent and being with mom and spending quality time with mom. And he's all by himself. He's in a strange place. Night is falling, and it is the very first night that he is on his own. Seems kind of lonely, kind of forsaken, but he has no choice but to bed down there for the night. Even on Outward Bound, when they had us spend one night under the stars, I still had my sleeping bag and a bunched up sweatshirt for a pillow. But Jacob, he has a stone for a pillow. And as he sleeps, he has a dream. And in his dream, he sees a ladder linking heaven and earth. And he sees angels, messengers from God, ascending and descending. And it's a vision of wonder and awe. And he wakes up and he sees this place that he thought was so forsaken and so lonely, and he recognizes that God is in this place. And so he calls it Beit El, Bethel, the house of God. And so what Jacob is starting to discover is that God is not attached to a geographical place, but God is with him wherever he goes. And it is the same conviction that we hear reflected in Psalm 139 that we're going to hear sung.
Many of Jesus' teachings came in the form of parables, simple stories about everyday life from which we were supposed to learn a message or a lesson. But unlike Aesop's fables that always concluded with the moral, Jesus didn't tell us what lesson we should learn. You may remember last week, James Ravenscroft explained that later in the same chapter, Matthew gave an explanation for the parable he preached about last week. Not surprisingly, today, Linda Butler will do the same thing and not use the same interpretation of today's parable that Matthew offers. Today, we hear the parable of the weeds from Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like this. A man sowed good seed in his field. One night, when everyone was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the plants grew and the ears of grain began to form, then the weeds showed up. The man's servants came to him and said, "Sir, it was good seed that you sowed in your field. Where did the weeds come from?" "It was some enemy who did this," he answered. "Do you want us to go and pull up the weeds?" they asked him. "No," he answered, "because as you gather the weeds, you might pull up some of the wheat along with them. Let the wheat and the weeds both grow together until harvest. Then I will tell the harvest workers to pull up the weeds first, tie them in bundles and burn them, and then to gather the wheat and put it in my barn."
I was out in the vegetable garden. I was down on my hands and knees weeding the small patch that my dad had entrusted to my care. And with great satisfaction, I looked at the pile of dying weeds and at the tidy rows of lettuce and spinach and peas and beans. And I thought to myself, why not help my dad by weeding one of his rows, which looked particularly neglected? So again, I set off, and I was almost at the end of the row when I realized that once I had taken out all of the plants I was sure did not belong, there was really nothing left. And it was at that point that my dad appeared. And he said, "Linda, why are you tearing out all of my parsnips?" And I thought, uh-oh. My only comfort was, A, my dad was a very patient man, and he was slow to anger and quick to appreciate the good intentions, if not the actions, of his youngest child. And B, I have never, ever, ever liked parsnips. Wheat or weeds? That's the story that Jesus tells us about this field in which weeds appear. And the agricultural workers are people after my own heart. You know, they're ready immediately to pull out those weeds so that they have this pristine field of wheat. But the owner says, we need to be cautious because the weeds may pull out the wheat along with them. So wait. Now, as David Leighton Brown mentioned, you know, this is typical of Jesus' parables. It sounds like a simple story, and it leaves us to figure out the meaning. Well, clearly, Jesus is not a first century Ed Lawrence offering gardening tips to his listeners. So what might this parable mean for us? And as David hinted, you know, Matthew, the author of Matthew later on, has an interpretation. And he's sure he's figured out the key. The key is it's an allegory. So the sower of the seeds is the Son of Man. The good seed is children of the kingdom of God. The bad seed are children of the evil one, and the one who scatters these weeds is the devil. And then the harvest is the end of the age when those evil ones will be all gathered up and put in a fiery furnace, while the righteous will, shine like the sun. Now, the author of Matthew is very fond of talking about the end times. And it seems to me he takes great delight in the thought of these condemned people wailing and weeping and gnashing their teeth. And I acknowledge that these scenes of the Last Judgment have given rise to some great pieces of art. But personally, I don't find it at all inspiring, and it doesn't really help at all with my day-to-day living. So as David mentioned, I'm not even touching his allegory. And I'm inviting us to look instead at the actual simple little story and listen for what God might be saying to us today. Now, there are biblical scholars who say that the weeds, which are sometimes referred to as darnel, look a great deal like wheat in their first stages. So there they are looking alike, but these agricultural workers are saying, we can differentiate. We know what is wheat.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I got it. Yeah, all right. Okay, this is good. I love technology. Anyway, so that they're saying that they can tell the difference between, the weed and the wheat. And at times, do we human beings act as if we can see the difference between weed and wheat? That we know what are good things and what are bad things. Now, take something as simple and elemental as food. When I was taking home economics in grade 7, 8, and 9, we had the 1961 Canada Food Guide, and it was our Bible. It said we would obtain optimum health if we ate the recommended number of servings from the 5 food groups. There was dairy, vegetables, fruit, bread and grains, meat and fish. In 2019, Food Guide comes out, no 5 food groups. The dairy is totally eliminated. There are no recommended number of servings, and instead it offers advice about these are foods you should eat frequently, and these are foods you should avoid. Now, what are you willing to bet that 20 years from now or 40 years from now, another food guide will come out totally different? Things change. Or how about technology? My favorite. I still write my sermons in fountain pen, but I have come to recognize that computers do have a use and a usefulness. When I was settled in 1984 in Emerson, Manitoba, the only books I had to consult were the ones I owned. The nearest library was an hour and a half away in Winnipeg, and there was no internet. So can you imagine my frustration when I'm trying to create my sermon and I half remember an event, I half remember a quotation or a hymn, and I'm racking my brains trying to remember the rest. And now I just Google. Before the pandemic, I was extremely critical of the amount of time some people spend on screens, like my great nephew, Evan. When he was visiting, I tried everything to get him away from his device, to play a game or go for a walk, anything, just get away from the screen. Well, now with the pandemic, guess who's on screen? Me. I'm on screen to attend worship or lead worship, to take part in workshops and meetings, and just to keep connected with people I care about. And believe it or not, I recognize that in some situations, a screen is better than in person. At Sharon Hope United Church, where I was for 9 months, more people attended Bible study and they participated more freely when we had Zoom than when we met in the church. Go figure. Wheat or weeds? At times do we human beings speak and act as if we can tell the difference between good people and bad people. And this is where I need my quotation, because I was absolutely determined I would not memorize part of a speech by President Trump. Because did you catch any of his speech on July 4th? Because he certainly sounds as if he can identify the weeds in the United States. It is, quote, the left-wing fascist mob trying to end America by erasing the nation's history and indoctrinating its children. And he acts as if he would cheerfully tear out these weeds, quote, the radical left, the Marxists, the anarchists, the agitators, the looters from the fabric of the United States in order to allow more room for good, God-fearing folk to survive and thrive. Now, I recognize Trump is an extreme example, but isn't there always a temptation for politicians to point at another party or another group or another nation and say they're the problem? They are the ones who have created this situation, all to take our attention away from them and stop us from reflecting on what they have said and what they have done or not done. Or have you been following the Black Lives Matter protests and listening to the stories that have been told about the Black youth and the men and the women who have been killed? And it seems to me that time after time, it was because someone looked and said, that person looks suspicious. That person seems to be somebody who might break into a house or do some damage. And so they reported to the police, as happened with Tammy Rice, who was 12 years old and had a toy gun, or they decided to take their own action, as with Ahmaud Arbery, who was the unarmed jogger, or with another young man who was just wearing a hoodie and coming back from the corner store. They look like bad people. In this time of pandemic, are there times when you've been in an indoor space and you found yourself glowering at that person who is not wearing a mask, or even worse, the one who has it on their chin, as if that's going to be a help? Or have you ever thought, maybe I should speak to that group in the park, they're not keeping their physical distance? Or I should point out to that customer in the drugstore or the supermarket that they're going the wrong way down the aisle? Haven't we been tempted? Maybe we're not ready like the person in New Brunswick who yelled at her neighbor visiting from Quebec, go home. But don't we at times seem to act as if we know who are the dangerous people who might, endanger our safety? When I was taking a course on conflict management, the instructor, John Savage, asked us to think about somebody whose actions were frustrating and irritating us, someone whom we might think of as an enemy. And immediately a face popped into my mind. And then he invited us to note all of the things about that person that were problematic. Just have fun describing that person. And I did, and with satisfaction, I looked at the list that I had
10. And then, only then, did he look at us and announce, you have just described yourselves. Not the part you like about yourself, not that shiny part you want to show the world, but the characteristics that you want to hide, you don't want to acknowledge. And it's so much easier to project our faults and our less than joyous personality traits out onto others. They're the bad people, not us. Wheat or weed. At times, we human beings try to judge our own actions. You know, this is a good action and this is a bad action. Well, I'm very fortunate that I am the educational supervisor for Joanne Schofield as she is working in Pentecost, BC. And because of that, each week I get to meet with her on the phone and talk about, you know, ministry in general and preaching in particular. And we agree that there are times that we really carefully prepare. We do our very best with the scripture and with writing a sermon, and it goes like, boing, you know, it just does not fly. And that's really hard on the ego because we want to be good. We'd like to be perfect, but we want to at least be good. But the reality is that time after time, God uses those dud sermons to touch someone's heart or to move someone to action. So who are we to judge, we or we? It really seems to me that when we human beings are most sure that we are doing good, that we are being righteous, and that we are just have God on our side, those are the times that we are most in danger of straying far from the way of Jesus. You know, just look at the history of the church. The Crusades, you know, to liberate the Holy Land from the infidel, and en route massacre Jews. Or the Inquisition, you know, to purify the church from heretics. Or Indian residential schools, you know, to bring Christianity and modern education to First Nations. Wheat or weeds? We human beings, like those agricultural workers, may think we can tell them apart as we look around at things and at people, or as we reflect on our own actions. We may say, oh yeah, these are good and these are bad. But the reality is that all too often we tear up wheat with the weeds. We overdo. We create more havoc than we do good. So why not leave the judgment to God, who actually knows us completely? Why not hold more loosely to what we think we know and open ourselves more to God's love and guidance and wisdom as we attend the entire field of this work? Oh God, we yearn for you. You who called Abraham and Sarah to leave their home and travel to a strange new land. You who made your presence known to Jacob away from the familiar comfort of his mother's tent. You who know us in our strengths and weaknesses, our compassion and coldness, our generosity and meanness, and love us steadfastly and unconditionally. We are grateful that when our lives are turned upside down, you still are there. When we set off on a journey, you are there to guide, encourage, and strengthen us. We pray for all who are finding life difficult, people who are mourning the death of someone they love, or are grieving a loss in their own life, perhaps of independence or ability or a relationship. Individuals who are ill in mind, body, or spirit. In silence, we name them and hold them in the light and warmth of your love. God, in the field of this world, wheat and weeds grow side by side. There is so much beauty in creation and goodness in human beings. We see it in random acts of kindness and the willingness and courage to address systemic problems. But there is also pain and ugliness and the evils of exploitation and oppression, racism and hate. We prayed for all who are suffering, those whose difficult circumstances have been made all the more precarious by COVID-19. All who are treated as if their lives don't matter. God, in the field of our lives, wheat and weeds grow side by side. We come to you as we are, with our needs and concerns. All these are prayers we lift to you in the name of Jesus, who taught us to turn to you as to a mother who loves us, saying, Eternal Spirit, life giver, pain bearer, love maker, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. Let us join in our closing hymn, Bless Now, O God, the Journey. Voices united, 633.
Bless now, O God.
Let us join together in our blessing and sending forth. Now may God, who gives seed to the sower and wheat to the reaper, give to us all that is needed to produce a good harvest. May God make us fertile in faith, love, and goodness, and take us out with joy, and lead us on in peace, as signs of the fruitfulness of God's realm of justice and peace. So following the postlude, the Zoom rooms will open, and I'll see you online next Sunday.